I am Daniel, and I am 27 years old. I used to believe that if I kept my head down, paid my dues, and didn't stir the pot, my family would eventually start recognizing me as more than just the responsible one. However, I recently realized that this is not the case. One of the people who always turns up to mend whatever is broken but never gets invited to anything that is whole is the fallback guy. This is the person who helps without being asked, who loans money just till Friday, and who always shows up to fix whatever is broken. Over the course of my adult life, I have spent the most of my time attempting to persuade myself that this job, that of the quiet provider, is something that to be proud of. Perhaps it was the case. Up until the previous month. The evening of a Wednesday had arrived. When I received the group text from my father, I was just returning home from a business trip with my bag still at my feet. I remember this because I had just returned. It is 6 o'clock for the family dinner. Take a seat. Big news to report. No punctuation, for the love of God. As is customary, this is only a command. In retrospect, I ought to have declined the offer, arranged a meeting, or asserted that I was still absent from the city. I, on the other hand, pushed my fatigue down, put on a clean shirt, and drove over to my parents' house, just like I had done every time before. My mother was busy in the kitchen as if she were preparing food for royalty, my father was seated at the head of the table as if he were the CEO, and my younger brother Zach was slouched at the opposite end of the table, scrolling through his phone as if he was allergic to making eye contact. Despite the fact that Zach is 2 years younger than I am, you would never be able to tell by the way he behaves. The individual possesses this gift, which is the ability to perform the bare minimum and still be made to feel like a hero simply for breathing. It was twice that I was expelled from college. In a single year, I took on 3 different jobs. And for some reason, if he makes a mistake, it is the obligation of another individual to confront him and correct him. Exactly as anticipated, dinner got underway. Small conversation about the neighbors, queries about my job for which no one really listened to the answers, and the customary praise session for Zach, who had apparently decided to take a sabbatical for his mental health. All of these things were going on. The reason he left his job once more was because he did not enjoy getting up before noon. This is classified as Code 4. I did not make any statements. When it comes to my family, I've realized that silence is more secure than sarcasm. Then, just as I was going to leave for the night, my father cleared his throat and gave Zach this slight nod. I was about to leave. Zach tucked his phone away in his pocket and leaned back, as if he were about to make a statement that would forever change his life. My stomach dropped to the floor. According to my father, he started by stabbing a piece of chicken as if it had wronged him. The next week, your brother will be moving in with you. It was as if a lead weight had fallen on the sentence. I blinked my eyes. What is it? He requires some breathing room. When Dad continued, it seemed as though everything had already been decided upon. It is impossible to continue living here. For an adult male, it is not a healthy choice. Additionally, you have that additional bedroom. Not even a semblance of surprise could be managed by Zach. It was just a smirk on his face, and he replied, "Please try not to touch my stuff, okay?" When I was halfway to my mouth, my fork froze. The pounding of my heart in my chest accompanied my slow setting it down. You are going to move him in with me, so what? It's just you alone. From the kitchen, my mother spoke up, and she didn't even bother to turn back. There is room for you. Because you work from home. You are constantly praising the peaceful atmosphere of your residence. The circumstance is ideal in every way. That final part struck an even greater chord than they most likely meant. I had once expressed how tranquil my location was, and they had taken it as a hint that I was lonely. This was a rare moment of weakness on my part. It's not that I appreciated my place or that I'd put a lot of effort into creating it. Rather, it's that I felt like I was missing something and necessary turbulence in my life. Zach continued, as if that was the final piece of the puzzle, I already pay rent there. As of right now, no. But after I have settled in, I will do so. Almost humorous was the absurdity of the whole situation. Not quite. On the other hand, what really struck me was not the choice itself. Rather, it was the fact that they were all so unflappable about it. It seemed as if I didn't even require assistance in any way. It was as if it were not my own space, my lease, or my existence. When I was in that situation, I was not a person to them. Only a useful resource. A solution to the problem. An additional room that has legs. It was my desire to yell, in order to put my napkin down and leave the room. I, on the other hand, simply grinned. He smiled, but it was a little smile, and his lips were tight. The kind of smile you give someone just before you completely change their life and take them out of their comfort zone. Due to the fact that they were unaware of the truth, which was the one that I had not disclosed to anyone else, which was that I had moved out of that flat. I had moved out the previous week. As you can see, after the third time that my parents attempted to use guilt to get me to give Zach a modest loan for his rent, I began to reflect on the fact that a significant portion of my life was not truly mine. This insight came to me at 2 in the morning while I was sitting in my apartment watching Zach crash on my couch for what had been a seemingly short weekend that had grown into 5 days. He had eaten through my groceries, left filthy dishes in the sink, and called a girl over who ended up stealing my headphones. He had also left the washer and dryer running. I can still vividly recall looking around and wondering why I was living in such a state. I don't understand why I was persistently sacrificing my comfort in order to allow my brother to continue acting as if becoming an adult was optional. In the morning of the following day, I handed my landlord notice. I discovered a more compact location on the opposite side of the city that was more peaceful, less expensive, and all mine. It was because I did not want to be lectured that I chose not to tell my family. And since I was aware, on some level, that they would not be aware that I had left. As I sat down at the dinner table, with their big revelation still hanging in the air, I simply nodded my head in agreement. As I picked up my fork once again, I confirmed, "All right. If you believe that to be the most appropriate course of action." Zach appeared to be smug. My parents appeared to be relieved. And I just sat there and ate the remainder of my dinner in solitude, thinking about how gratifying it was going to be when they finally attempted to make that move. Because of the lease, why? My name was no longer associated with it. Is it the apartment, then? Unoccupied in every way. In addition to that, I had made sure to leave behind just the right amount of stuff to give the impression that someone was still residing there. For the time being. They were completely unaware that the entire scheme was about to collapse on them, and I was not going to make any effort to prevent it from happening. This time, not at all. It was 2 days later that the repercussions started, which was far faster than I had anticipated. I had anticipated that Zach would spend a few more days lazing around our parents' house before finally making his way to his new kingdom. However, it seemed that the concept of having a place of his own had sparked something inside him. It's also possible that his mother finally became fed up with him using her yoga mat as a tray for food. His first call was to me. At approximately 11:30 a.m. It rang for a while. Second, there are 2 more instances. In the end, a text message appeared. "Do you happen to have a spare key?" It went unnoticed. After waiting for 3 hours, I received another message. "Now we are outside. You have not arrived." Remained silent at this point. I imagined him and my father standing in the hallway of my previous apartment, most likely arguing about who was to blame for the fact that they weren't able to carry a key with them. Because the building has a locked front door and no intercom system, you are unable to enter the facility unless someone provides you the permission to do so. In addition, I made certain that the property manager would not be doing anyone any favors by doing anything special. My phone lit up once more at 6 o'clock. This time, it was the father. "Talk to me. Right now." I bided my time. Never even bothered to open the message. After 10 minutes, I was served another one. What exactly is going on here? Finally, I gave my response. Just 2 words there. "Inquire with Zach." There was no response. Not a single sound. It wasn't until the following morning, however, that things started to look up. I was enjoying a cup of coffee in my new home, with the curtains drawn to reveal the peaceful courtyard outside, when I received a phone call from a number that I was not familiar with. Typically, I would disregard it. But my natural inquisitiveness won out in the end. "How are you? Is it Daniel Hugh Carson who is here?" A forceful, formal, and clipped voice asked the question. "What is the caller?" "A member of the Oak Hill Residences management team. My name is Miranda. At this time, I have a scenario that involves your previous unit. Would you like to continue to occupy the premises?" I wore a grin. "No way. Moved out the previous week." At this point, The lease was ended, and the final walkthrough was finished. The signed release form is available to you if you require it. There is a pause. Afterwards, she stated that it was interesting because there were two people present at that very moment who insisted that they lived there. Someone asserts that they are your brother. When I said that, I was leaning back. That seems to be approximately right on. There is again another halt. According to them, you granted them permission. I didn't laugh, and I didn't smile either. Were they able to present a lease? Is the deal signed? Any evidence of residency? No. Only assertions made aloud. Afterwards, I suggested that you contact the authorities, I remarked. Not a single tremor. They are trespassing on the property. After that, there was a wonderful silence that followed. She said it with a firm tone. We'll handle it. It is my pleasure, Mr. Carson. Over the course of that afternoon, my phone finally blew up. Calls from Dad that were not returned. This comes from Mom. Passive-aggressive texts are always preferred, even by Zach, who never contacts anyone by phone. Golden was the tone of the voicemails. Dad is the first to do so. That is what you did. They claim that you are no longer the tenant of the property. That is not feasible, is it? This is the next one. You, Mom. Still more frantic. Daniel, you did not inform us that you relocated. Zach is the only one left here. It is the landlord's opinion that he has no business being there. How are things going? Then, the piece of resistance, Zach's voicemail, which was mixed with anger and indignation in equal measure. A dude. What is the Danielayer, Tayu? You were aware that we were about to arrive. You allowed me to pack up all of my belongings and drive across town. Indeed, there is no one present. The couch was taken by you. To be serious? I see. Exactly. I neglected to mention that. Before I left, I had already sold the majority of the furnishings. The only thing I forgot to take with me was an old bookcase that had a broken leg, a plastic fork that was stored in the kitchen drawer, and a single post-it note that was affixed to the refrigerator and stated, "Good luck." I made it a point to give it 2 days before the storm actually arrived. As it turned out, the weekly necessity of having dinner together as a family on Sunday actually turned out to be an ambush waiting to happen. I walked inside my parents' house as if nothing had occurred, greeted my mother with a peck on the cheek, nodded to my father, and even smiled at Zach, who appeared to be a man who had just been kicked out of a fantasy. It was silent from him. He only sneered. Dinner began in a hushed manner. Overly silent. Do you remember the weird silence that reigns before a brawl breaks out? That was the general atmosphere. The first person to burst was the father. If you moved, why didn't you notify us about it? The statement was made while he was stabbing his roast steak as if it owed him money. I gave a shrug. Had no idea that anyone would be interested. Obviously, you were aware that your brother was going to move in. No. In a methodical and slow manner, I said. You came to the conclusion that my brother was planning to move in. I was not questioned by anyone. The mother yelled out, "He is your family. You had the room with you. In what manner did you intend to proceed? Why don't you just let him be poor?" "You are such a self-centered jerk," Zach murmured to himself. That struck a chord with me. However, it was not painful. Worse things have been spoken by him. However, due to the fact that it was so entitled. Like I had done him a disservice by denying him the opportunity to live rent-free in a location that I no longer occupied. Therefore, I sat back, put my fork down, and turned my attention to him in a direct manner. You know, I used to be curious about the reasons for your indifference to duty. This is because no one ever made you suffer the consequences of your actions, as I have come to learn. I beg your pardon, he scoffed. You believe that you are superior than everyone else just due to the fact that you pay your bills on time? I replied with a negative. Compared to someone who waits until they are outside a locked door to inquire about the location of the key, I believe that I am superior. The man tossed his napkin down quickly. It's enough. You ought to have informed us. Also, I mentioned you. Look out for him. I ought to have inquired. However, you do not ask me questions. Duties are given to me by you. You have the presumption that I will simply give in and agree. And you don't take the time to thank me. To continue, you simply proceed to the next favor. Mom appeared to be in a state of shock. Zach mumbled something to himself when he was lying down. It didn't Danielaer to me. I told it with a calm voice. I moved. Because I didn't want to put any strain on you, I chose not to tell you. My desire was not to feel guilty. Because I did not want to be used once more. What I needed was a fresh start. In addition, if you believe that this is an act of selfishness, you would want to consider what it is that you are asking me to give up and to whom you are asking me to give it. There was complete silence in the room. This even made the air feel heavier. I got to my feet, folded my napkin, and looked around at the people who were in complete disbelief. No, I am not irate. On the other hand, I am no longer your backup plan. Later on, I left the room. The hush that prevailed after the meal did not continue for very long. After a period of 3 days, the group chat, which was often utilized for birthday announcements and Mom's passive-aggressive warnings, suddenly turned into a show of fireworks. There was no sign of Zach. For Zach, the first communication arrived at 8:17 in the morning, which was essentially the same time as sunrise. Wow, Zach wrote in a text message. Excellently refined. Daniel. The act of putting your own brother out of business. For the past week, I have been passing the night on the couch. Zach, please keep this a secret, Mother texted. Let's talk about it later. Without a doubt, they ought to be aware, Zach texted. Up until the point where he is expected to do something authentic for this family, Daniel is the golden kid. I failed to provide a response. Not even my father did. Not at this time. I can only imagine that he was allowing the drama to simmer in his mind while simultaneously composing a sanctimonious speech. On the other hand, my cousin Sophie, who is typically not one to get involved in a mess, joined in. You were asked to live rent-free in Daniel's place, and you just assumed that it would happen? Sophie asked in a text message. However, he does not owe you that. Zach sent Sophie a text message that said, "Stay out of it." Message sent by Sophie, just saying. I would be finished if I were Daniel as well. I really wish I could claim that the entire family was on board with me in such a manner, but Sophie was the one who stood out. I got 3 missed calls from my aunt, 1 from my grandmother, and a bombardment of messages from relatives I hadn't heard from since my father's 60th birthday. All of these messages were kindly suggesting that I should reconsider my decision for the sake of peace. All of these messages came within an hour. Harmony. The very same tranquility that I had spent years slowly acquiring via the use of time, favors, and rent payments. Precisely the same tranquility that I was at last regaining. In addition, they were enraged that I had the audacity to do it. That day, I declined to respond to anyone. I concentrated on my task. About the cleaning. During a trip to the grocery store that took a lot longer than it should have. I was eventually able to return home that evening, and when I did, I discovered a letter. There is no email. Not a letter. When I put it under my door, it was handwritten, folded once, and looked like some kind of declaration of war. His father had sent it. Yes, my beloved Daniel. There is no love, Dad. 2 pages of tightly worded disappointment are all that is provided. Exactly how I had made the family feel ashamed. There was a time when Zach was going through a challenging period, and I had kicked him while he was on the ground floor. What a mistake it would have been for me to make a scene instead of coming to them first. After all is said and done, you are superior to this. I was struck by that line in a peculiar way. It wasn't because I believed it. Rather, it was because it was such a deceptive little twist. This is the guilt grenade. This was a subtle attempt to recast everything I did as harsh rather than essential. Since I just stood up for myself, I feel as though I have just lost my moral high ground. I was fixated on the letter for a considerable amount of time. Following that, I reached for a pen, turned the final page over, and scrawled 3 words in the margin of the page. I am at long last. It was the following day that I delivered it to their mailbox. It wasn't until a few days later that I learned that Zach had attempted to persuade the administration of the apartment complex to allow him to remain there until the situation was resolved. Despite the fact that he claimed to have verbal authorization, he even attempted to show them old photographs of himself inside the apartment, where he was seen sitting on my couch like a king. It was unsuccessful. The building had already rented the space to a new tenant, who was not pleased to discover Zach lounging in the stairway like a grumpy raccoon. The new renter was not happy with the situation. It goes without saying that I did not hear this from Zach. I was obstructed by him. This information was relayed to me by Miranda, the manager, who called me to provide me with an update. She concluded the call with a remark that your brother is no longer permitted to be present on the grounds. After that, I expressed my gratitude to her. Until the gathering of the family. Indeed, that did take place. On that Sunday, my mother sent me a text message. Dinner is served. Everyone is going to show up. The moment has come for us to all talk like adults. I was on the verge of not going, but there was a part of me that wanted to see their faces. It was the part of me that had been sitting in silence for what seemed like years. It is important to stare them in the eyes, but not with resentment, but with calm determination. This time to demonstrate that I was not going to give up. And so I went. The same house. It's the same kitchen. Ever since I was 10 years old, my family and I have gathered around the same large oak dining table for Thanksgiving. It was already there, and Zach was seated rigidly at one end of the room. I entered the room, but he did not glance at me at all. He was standing at the window with his arms folded. Mom was slicing carrots with apprehension, even though she had no need to do so. At the same time, 2 chairs had been reserved. I had one for me, and the other is for the meaningless concept of obligation that they still believed they could coerce me into respecting. Daniel, as soon as I walked in, my father mentioned, "Be seated." It wasn't me. Before I continue, I have something to say. Before this becomes yet another intervention that is disguised as a dinner, I remarked, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. The mother looked up, astonished. An eyebrow was raised by the father. To Zach's credit, he did not speak and kept his mouth shut. I stated that I am not angry. On the other hand, I am not apologizing. There was no one that I betrayed. It was not me that sabotaged Zach. Having a need for space prompted me to relocate. Furthermore, you made the decision, without me having to ask, that I did not merit that space. Mama remarked to her son in a gentle but serious tone, "You have made your brother homeless." Instead, I stated that he was the one who made himself homeless by presuming that the life of another person was his to live in. At long last, Zach mumbled, "You have the ability to forewarn me. During the time that you were leaving pizza boxes on my bookcase and crashing on my couch, I said that I had done it. When you pretended to be the owner of the place and wandered around it, in which you never once expressed gratitude to me. That was the warning you gave." Nothing moved in the room. Then, Dad made the statement that completely altered the course of events. "In the past, you were dependable." It hurt to hear that. Given that it was accurate. It had been me. Finally, I was able to comprehend the reason why that particular word always seemed to be both a compliment and a curse. I was fixated on my father for a little period of time after he had spoken it. "In the past, you were dependable." I felt the words reverberate in my chest. Not due to the fact that they astonished me. On the other hand, because they provided evidence that supported my long-held suspicions. To him, I was not at all a son. I served in a capacity. The moment when the Wi-Fi connection failed. When someone required assistance in moving. When Zach required money to post bail. During a time when the mortgage was unpaid. When the painting of the guest room was required. Without fail, it was me. Not a single time with a thankfulness. There was never a single instance of respect shown. The only thing that was expected of me was that I would say yes and smile while I said it. As I sat down carefully and sighed, I looked at my father who was sitting across the table from me. "You have a point." I stated that. In the past, I was dependable. Dependable, analogous to a spare tire. Dependable, much like the low-level background noise that nobody notices until it is no longer there. His eyes became more narrowed. "Please you not misunderstand what I have said." "Not at all. To clarify, I am finally able to comprehend what you meant when you said that you were reliable. I took you to mean convenient, predictable in nature, not a sound, insane." I softly raised my hand in response to Mom's attempt to interrupt me. "It's not Mom. I beg you. Please give me a moment to finish this now." Despite the fact that she was closing her mouth, her eyes were begging. While Zach continued to stare at me with his arms crossed, it appeared as though we were in a courtroom and he was the plaintiff. As soon as I recognized that I wasn't living my own life, I decided to move out. My life was the same as everyone else's. Making payments on bills that were not mine. Putting an end to issues that I did not cause. I never got the chance to give time back. On top of that, whenever I requested a little bit of privacy or a little bit of respect, I was told that I was being self-centered. At that point, I could hear a slight break in my voice, but I continued. Despite the fact that Zach had invited unknown people into my flat, I allowed him to stay with me. In spite of the fact that he had promised, I gave him a loan. There are 3 occasions. He promised to repay me, but he never did. In addition, when I finally needed a break, when I made the decision to relocate and not tell anyone about it so that I could take a moment to catch my breath, the very first thing that this family did was attempt to hand over my life to him once more. It was finally Zach's moment. What gives you the right to presume that you are superior to us now simply because you moved into a small apartment down the street? I responded with a negative, saying that I believe I am finally on equal footing. Due to the fact that I made a decision that was focused on me for once. This is not about making up for your faults. Grow up, please. No, Zach, you need to mature. He genuinely flinched in response to the sharpening of my tone. Even though you are 25 years old, you continue to behave as if the world owes you a comfortable landing spot. It has never been more than 6 months since you last worked at a job. You utilize individuals as if they were furniture, until they inform you that they are not useful. The worst aspect about it all? Really now, you are not really aware of how fortunate you have been. For the simple reason that my parents would have disowned me many years ago if I had behaved even half as recklessly as you do. As Zach began to speak, I once again raised my hand to prevent him from continuing. What else is there to say? No, you are not even to blame for it. It goes to them. After that, Dad sat up more upright. My apologies. You are responsible for him being in this state. You shielded him from every consequence, covered up every mess, placed the responsibility for his faults on everyone else, and used me as your remedy. Although you informed me that it was my responsibility to assist him, you never once told him that it was his responsibility to mature. That is plenty, the father grumbled. I responded with a cool no. Not at this time. I turned to my mother. There was a time when you informed me that Zach was going through a difficult period. Your statement was made 3 years ago, and it was repeated 2 months ago. The question is, at what point does a patch stop being rough and completely transform into the road? According to what you informed me, I am the one who is dependable and strong. Indeed, you are correct. However, being strong does not mean that you should be a doormat. She chose not to respond. Just for a moment, she gazed down at her lap. I got to my feet. This is not the place where I came to request an apology. Not even to explain myself, I did not come. Here I am gonna establish a border. Zach laughed in a mocking manner. You are a therapist, right? What are you? When I turned to him for the very final time, I said, no. All you need is someone who is finished enabling you. Even though his face was red at this point, Dad was not yelling. He had that kind of wordless wrath that used to terrify me when I was younger, and he was clenching his jaw while doing it. Not any longer. In the event that you all wish to act as if I am the bad guy for opting for peace, that is perfectly acceptable. I won't engage in a debate with you. Do not, however, anticipate that I will clean up this mess the following time. I am not responsible for Zach in any way. The issues that are plaguing this family are not my responsibility. In addition, I will not be silent from this point forward. Following that, I made my way to the entrance. Daniel, on the other side of me, Mom whispered. Take care not to leave in such a manner. Putting my hand on the doorknob, I paused. Is there a way for me to depart? I received no response. And with that, I left. For the very first time in my life, I did not experience any feelings of remorse regarding it. A period of 6 months has passed since that supper. I have not communicated with Zach. Someone he had known for a long time moved in with him. The last time I heard, he had been dismissed from yet another job, and before leaving, he had damaged the guy's place. In addition to leaving behind a cat that he had borrowed from an ex-classic Zach, it appears that he is late on 2 months' worth of rent. 2 weeks after our major disagreement, my father only sent me a single email. There is no topic line, this is just a quick message. I'll be happy to talk to you whenever you feel like it. I failed to provide a response. On occasion, Mom will telephone. Brief and courteous updates are the norm. After inquiring about my well-being and informing me about my cousins, she meticulously avoids bringing up Zach in any way. I believe that she may have at long last begun to develop an understanding of the distinction between support and exploitation. Regarding myself, I continue to reside in that compact flat that has a view of the courtyard. In addition to painting the walls a nice beige color and purchasing plants that I actually remember to water, I also replaced the old couch with a leather one that was previously owned. Then I started cooking once more. I wake up in the middle of the night. Even more, I took in a rescued dog by the name of Bruno. Not only is he quiet and faithful, but he is also the first roommate I've ever had who has never stolen my food or slept on my sofa for an extended period of time. What else is there to say? I am content. The kind of happy that is not like the dramatic movie conclusion. Simply stable, calm and tranquil, complete. There are times when I go to sleep thinking about how long I allowed myself to remain in a role that was painful for me just because it was comfortable. With regard to the number of instances in which I allowed silence to buy me momentary tranquility at the expense of my own dignity. However, I am reminded that I altered the conclusion of the story. It's not like I just walked away. I shut the door behind me. Moreover, I secured it.